Welcome, welcome. Today, we are talking about the science of letting go. Now, welcome. Hope you're having a good day. And let's just jump right into it because when we talk about letting go, there's a lot of ways we can use this term, right? We can use letting go to talk about relationships, right? Which is a really common aspect. We can also use to talk about bad habits. Bad is a relative term, but we'll use it. Another way we can talk about letting go is identity. So, a way we used to see ourselves. There's a lot of ways: grief, sadness, anger. There's a lot of things we can let go of, right? But when people say let go, what are they really saying? What is going on there? And what does it mean to let go? Obviously, we understand in the physical sense what let go means. When you let go of something in the physical sense, it means you're holding something and you just allow the natural forces to take place. So one by one, one by one, it's sort of like letting gravity take over. It's about a very particular trait. And this trait is a super important word, so I'm going to highlight it because this is going to be the core of what we're talking about today. And that is surrender. Now, I don't mean surrender in the sort of combative sense, like there's a victory and you're surrendering, you're allowing yourself to lose. But surrender is this idea of you're no longer fighting the current, but you're allowing the current to take you. And that you are releasing resistance. So as we surrender, allow, release resistance, we are essentially letting go. But you might say, okay, well, in what sense is that with relationships, bad habits, identity, grief, sadness, anger? Like, what does that allowing, releasing resistance, and surrender mean in these instances? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, if you're having a good day, please like and subscribe. Makes a big difference. Allows me to grow the channel, share it with more people, helps the algorithm. And it's always validating, to know that what I'm saying is helping somebody. But a lot of these are just working out. Okay, so now let's talk about the 3-plane model of our being. Now, if you've watched our other videos, you know what that is. If this is the first one, you'll know that human beings were third-degree beings, right? So third-degree means that essentially our entire being at its fundamental level can be split into 3 levels. So we have our spirit here at the top. We have our mind here in the middle. And then down here, we have our physical reality, so our body. And all this together makes our being, right? Now, something I want to say is that once we start talking about the body, we are talking about being in general because everything physical, because physicality is the result of spirit and mind. And that's basically to just say physical reality is the effect, right? Not the cause, right? And so oftentimes if we want to change something in physical reality, we have to change where it exists mentally and where it sits spiritually first. And it's only when we change these things does the change in physical reality become permanent. We can try to change things physically, but without changing where it sits in our mind and our spirit, especially when it comes to ourselves, no lasting change can be made. This is why it's so hard to let go of habits, relationships, So the issue with most relationships and how most dynamics run. So reality, remember, functions this way. Spirit down to the physical, right? So spirit is about 80-ish% of reality. Mind is about 18%. And then physical body being here is about 2%. Just like to put that in relative terms, just so you guys know like the level of difference. So obviously if we want to change something, when we're talking about letting something go, most of it exists spiritually. So in order to let go, we have to come to this place where we've emotionally allowed that to happen. Now, when we talk about emotions, right? Emotions are obviously how we feel into our spirit. But when we feel into our spirit, say smoking, right? Let's say we smoke and we're just like, oh, I smoke, whatever. And we say, well, I want to quit smoking. Now we know in terms of where we're at, that emotion based on the Hawkins scale, right? So now let's do another Hawkins scale down here. Here you have things like shame at the bottom. And then at the very top you have enlightenment, right? And then here you have like peace. And down here you have courage. And a whole host of other emotions. But let's circle in on here. So we're going to zoom in. And we're now going to take courage at the top, right? Because that's what we're really going to talk about. So courage, which is basically what happens when you start moving past that threshold emotionally to make a decision, right? Because courage is when you're making a decision. Before that, you'll have emotions like anger, grief, fear. Desire is a really big one. So desire actually technically comes after fear. Desire is when there's something that's wanted, but you feel a sense of separation from it. And usually desire is when we start moving up the scale, right? As we move towards the decision point of courage. And then after courage, you get the more allowing emotions where you say have neutrality, reason is eventually what you're going to do. Because once you start getting into reason, right after reason, you're going to start moving into the emotion that we would call acceptance. And acceptance is where you begin to release. So when you can emotionally get to a place where you're able to move through all these emotions towards acceptance, that's when you'll be able to release whatever it is you're focusing on, right? So if it's smoking, get into a place of smoking first where you can accept what it is. So you've reasoned out what exactly it is for you. And you've been able to move through all those emotions up to the point of acceptance where you can just release it and let it go. Then after that, peace, joy, harmony. And then you find a relationship with smoking and whatever you do. And typically, if you start loving yourself, you're not going to embody self-destructive habits, which smoking is. Now you might ask, well, Oni, how do I do that emotionally if I'm not even that in touch with my emotions? Well, as we say, so emotions are the language of the spirit. Thoughts are the language of the mind. And the language of the body is your actions. Now, something a lot of people really struggle with is they try to make reality bend and work differently than how it does. So they oftentimes will think, I'll do the actions here and then push up. So this is not how reality functions. But we can rewire ourselves as human beings to, how would you say, act as if. And it is through these acting as if that you will then, because this is how most people actually do it, but it's being able to sustain that level of resistance because you're moving contrary to how reality works against your creation. But as you're doing this, you're going to find that as reality or the universe life pushes down and then you move up, you're going to start seeing where the blocks are. You're going to start seeing where you might have desire or fear or grief or anger or whatever it is causing these things. And then by interacting with the emotions at each of these stages, you will then know what needs to be addressed. Now, this is all very abstract. So, because we're talking about third degree models, right? And so, but this is the most accurate, substantial way and the simplest manner in which to let go of everything. And if you do come to understand what I'm talking about, being able to change beliefs, let go of things becomes very simple, very easy when you have a very solid understanding of your being at this level. And I myself am a testament to it, right? A lot of what I'm doing now is just finding what are the thoughts, what are the emotions, what are the constructs that I need to look at by examining my desires and moving towards them. And then a lot of my work is done in grace, so just figuring out how do I work through the emotions mentally. And that's one of the biggest reasons I started doing things on YouTube and teaching these lessons and things, because a lot of it in my own personal journey was I felt a lot of shame around being different and sticking out and having kind of an understanding of things but not really feeling like I could share. And I always had a desire, but when I faced that desire, it was coming from this fear. And eventually I had to get over that fear. But on that way to that courage, I would get angry about the life I was living and feeling that my life, I wasn't living up to my potential. And so when I got angry, I got a little prideful, thinking like I'm better than this life. I don't want this for myself. So I took the courageous step and then started doing things. And then I started recognizing a lot of the things that were holding me back on a neutral place. And then just little by little, I was able to move through willingness, move through all the different emotions that I needed. And then eventually I got to acceptance, where I accepted these people were never going to change, and that I couldn't do what I was going to do for them, and that their opinions couldn't matter more than my own. And then I got to a place where I accepted that, moved into love for myself. And then when I started doing that, naturally, because the emotions were let go, because I was able to move through those emotions, the thoughts from I'm not able to do it, I can't do it, I don't have the right, naturally begin to drip away as well, because all the thoughts that didn't match that emotional vibration no longer had place. And how that showed up in my actions and my being is that I then stopped resisting. I stopped procrastinating. I stopped not doing the things that I wanted to do. I started making the videos. I started talking to people. I made my group. I just naturally started sharing all the things that I wanted. And that's because I allowed those emotions to rise up within me. And so it was a letting go. It wasn't something that I had to try and strive for. It was a surrender, very much a surrender to these emotions, because I was able to move them up the scale. My consciousness has been developed through a lot of meditation, self-work, and frankly, a lot of experience with failure. So obviously, not everyone needs or wants to do it that way. So I would say one of the biggest things you can help yourself with is find people who know better. So obviously, if you need help or support with these things, reach out to me. There's a link in the description if you want to work one-on-one and help apply these principles for your specific situation and your life, so you can get your life on track and move into alignment and live at deeper values. One of the biggest things that I see when working with clients and even in myself is that oftentimes we get stuck in releasing this old paradigm of body first, then mind. And a lot of people don't even acknowledge the spirit. We know it's there, but we don't acknowledge it. And I think one of the most common, like if you want to know the fastest way, start treating your emotions as the primary trigger of being. If you start saying that these are number one, even though all of society says not to, if you say, if how I feel is going to dictate what my life looks like, you will focus on making sure you feel differently and not focus so much on what it looks like. Because if you know the feeling you want to have, eventually the thoughts and the physical manifestation are just going to come to support that feeling. And so, one of the biggest breakthroughs I had, was really mastering this idea of gratitude. I might even make a whole video about it. But gratitude, if you want the biggest feeling unlock, learn how to feel grateful. In my own personal journey right now, I came to see gratitude is the big kahuna of emotions. Because even after peace, there's gratitude. Gratitude is really what facilitates all the good things, and like having things at the absolute level you want. And I've seen that in my life, and without meaning to, I think I have a pretty strong intellectual understanding of these things. I have a very strong capacity, but I do realize emotionally, gratitude has been one of the more difficult emotions for me to process and hold on to. And that now is my own personal journey of taking on gratitude and sitting within that and letting go of everything that isn't gratitude. And so that has been a lot of different things. So that was with relationships, that was with activities, with a lot of the things I was spending my time on, and essentially saying, does this thing does this person, does this activity, does this habit make it easier or more difficult to be grateful for my life? Does this make me more grateful or less grateful? And then always just making decisions based off of that. And I would say that's probably the number one trigger. And then I wouldn't be surprised that as I focused in on that emotion, things like my channel growing, the book selling, if that doesn't change from here. Because I've even had a lot of good success. And I would say I'm an optimistic person, but I wouldn't go as far to say as that I'm a grateful person. I don't think I naturally come off very grateful. But I'm stepping into that. I'm embodying that gratitude and deciding that I am a grateful person. And from this day forth, working on that and substantiating that and sitting in that. And that's where I would say is like, if you really want the hack, surrender to gratitude. And whatever surrendering to gratitude means, it means that sometimes smoking might teach you a lesson and you let it go. A relationship might have an idea or show you a few things, but then you let it go. And sometimes gratitude also might mean that you realize that maybe you were being defensive and that you were incorrect about something, and that something you're thinking about letting go is actually you need to let go of your pride. You need to let go of your sense of self-worth attached to it because you realized you weren't being grateful. Either way, I just really think if you want the hack to all of this, focusing on gratitude and allowing yourself to surrender to what that word and what that emotion means is the key. And then if you're having a hard time being at gratitude, just find out, where are you? Are you in shame? Are you in courage? Are you in apathy? If you feel nothing and you're like, well, I feel nothing, then you're in apathy. That's a good start. That means you're in apathy. So then after apathy, you then want to examine what it is you're afraid of. And after your fears, you then want to examine what is it you desire. And then when you examine what you desire, examine what are the things that make you feel anxious, or what are the things you feel grief for not having? What are the things that make you sad? Then after that, when you experience that sadness, what is the anger? What makes you feel angry? Then move on to pride. When you start feeling pride, move on to the courage and take the step, take the thing that you need to do, and just move through that step or whatever. And that's how we do it. And this is why guys might say, well, you're not giving any pragmatic, actual advice. Like, what do I physically do? And it's because what that looks like in your life is going to be different. The mechanics that stay the same are the emotions you need to experience and the thoughts you need to have. And even the thoughts are going to vary. Remember, the thoughts are only about 18% of the equation. 80% of the equation and the work you're going to be doing to really change your reality, change your life, is going to be in understanding and knowing how to transmute and move through emotions. And then finding the proper frameworks, thoughts, and ideas, which is why I teach about the 7th degree law and all the 7 degrees of law, and all those ideas, that's like 80%, 18%. 80% of it is just discovering the emotions, knowing what you're feeling, and then finding the framework or the laws to put that in. And then after that, the actions and the bodies will take care of themselves. But that's so individualized to each situation. But this is the part that's universal: the emotions and the thoughts. Well, and the thoughts are less universal. They're only about 18% of them universal. But the emotions, that's where the meat of it is. And so if you can really tap in and understand how you're feeling about anything in particular, figure out where you are with those emotions. And then when you figure out when you are with those emotions, make sure to diagnose properly and accurately so that you know exactly where you are. And if you need help with that, reach out. I'd love to hear your situation down in the comments section. And once you know where you are, then you simply can plot a course to go where you're going. And then after that, it's just finding the right mental framework that fits for you within the 7 degrees you have. And then, the actions and everything will take care of themselves. Those things will become obvious, what you need to do. But I can't tell you what you need to do, but I can tell you what you need to feel, and I can give you some frameworks of thoughts to help you get there. And that's what I do. So anyway, that is the science of letting go in a nutshell. Have gratitude, surrender to gratitude, find the thoughts that come with that gratitude, then do whatever those thoughts tell you to do. That simple. Surrender, baby, surrendered. I hope all is well, and you guys have a good day. Stay happy, stay healthy. Peace.